curled up like a tiny, sleepy cloud. His ears twitched once, then settled. His breathing slowed, in and out, in and out. Pause. Not far away. Eustace sat in his chair, muttering something half-heartedly, before his head tilted forward, and he too drifted off. The house, the farm, the entire stretch of nowhere, was falling asleep. Gentle wind rises softly, but courage was not fully asleep. Not yet. His eyes fluttered, just slightly open, because something felt different tonight. Not scary. No, just unfamiliar. Soft, distant hum appears. At first, it was barely noticeable. A faint glow, far beyond the window, somewhere out in the fields. Courage lifted his head slowly, his tiny nose twitching. He blinked once, twice, then gently slipped out of Muriel's lap without waking her. His paws made no sound on the wooden floor, as if even they understood. This was a quiet kind of night. Soft floor creak, slow footsteps. He padded toward the window, and there it was, a light. Small, soft, glowing faintly in the distance. Not bright like lightning, not harsh like headlights, but warm, almost like a candle, floating far out in the dark fields. Courage tilted his head, his usual instinct, to tremble, to panic, to imagine the worst, didn't come. Instead, he felt curious. Pause. Soft wind chimed home. The light flickered gently, as if it noticed him. Courage blinked again, and for a moment, it felt like the light blinked back. Longer pause. Behind him, Muriel stirred softly in her sleep. Courage, she whispered faintly, her voice wrapped in dreams. Courage looked back at her, his eyes soft. Then slowly, carefully, he turned again toward the window. The light was still there, waiting, not moving closer, not moving away, just glowing. Soft hum deepened slightly. Courage's little tail gave the tiniest wag. Not fast, not excited, just gentle. He walked to the door. The handle creaked softly as he pushed it open, and the cool night air welcomed him like a quiet friend. Outdoor ambience, grows, crickets, soft wind. The world outside felt different at night. Slower, softer, like everything had agreed to whisper instead of speak. Courage stepped onto the porch, his paws brushing against the wooden boards. Each step careful, each movement calm. He looked out again. The light was still there, just beyond the cornfield, floating, waiting, pause. Normally, Courage would hesitate. He would shake, his knees knocking, his eyes wide. But tonight, something about the light felt safe, like it wasn't calling him into danger, but into something gentle. Soft piano note. So, very slowly, Courage stepped off the porch and onto the grass. The ground was cool beneath his paws, the night air wrapping around him like a soft blanket. He walked forward, step by step, the tall corn swaying quietly on either side, rustling leaves, slow and rhythmic. The light flickered again, a little brighter now, as if it was happy he was coming closer. Courage paused, tilted his head again, and then he took another step. Pause. Back at the house, Muriel shifted slightly in her chair, her humming fading into silence as her breathing deepened. Eustace snored softly, completely unaware of the quiet little journey beginning outside. Returned to field ambience. Courage moved deeper into the field. The house now just a soft shadow behind him. The light growing clearer ahead. It wasn't large, not overwhelming. Just enough. Enough to see. Enough to feel. Enough to follow. Soft, glowing hum continues. And as Courage walked, his fear didn't grow. It faded, little by little, step by step, like the darkness itself was making room for something else. Something warm, something kind. Long pause, wind settles. Finally, he reached the edge of the field, and there, hovering just above the ground, was the light. A small glowing orb, soft white, with hints of golden warmth, like moonlight mixed with something alive. Courage sat down, very gently, his eyes wide but calm. The light drifted closer, slowly, carefully, as if it didn't want to startle him. It stopped just in front of him, and for a moment, everything was still. No wind, no sound, just courage and the light. Pause. Then, very softly, the light pulsed. Once, twice, and somehow, Courage understood. Not with words, not with thoughts, but with feeling. The light wasn't here to scare. It wasn't here to chase. It was here to watch, to protect, to stay. Gentle musical swell. Courage's ears relaxed. His body softened. And slowly, very slowly, he lay down in the grass. Right there, beside the glowing light. His eyes grew heavier. The night wrapping around him like a lullaby. The light dimmed just slightly, matching his rhythm, matching his breath, as if it, too, was settling in. Long, slow breathing rhythm sound cue. In and out. In and out. Pause. Far away, the farmhouse stood quietly, held gently under the same moonlight. Muriel slept peacefully. Eustace snored softly. And in the middle of nowhere, a small dog and a quiet light rested together as the night grew deeper and softer and calmer, fade into soft ambient hum, very slow, and somewhere, just beyond what could be seen, the light shimmered once more, as if whispering, "I'm here." Courage lay quietly in the cool grass, his small body rising and falling with each slow breath, in and out, in and out. Beside him, a soft, glowing light hovered. Dim, warm, steady, as if it were breathing with him. Pause. For a while, nothing happened. And that was exactly what made it feel safe. No sudden sound, no strange shadows jumping out, no rushing footsteps, just the quiet rhythm of the night. Gentle wind brushes through the cornfield. The tall stalks swayed softly, like they were whispering to one another. And Courage, for the first time in a long while, did not feel afraid of the dark. Pause. His eyes slowly opened, just a little. He looked at the light again. Still there. Still glowing. Still waiting. Courage lifted his head, his ears drooping gently to the sides, and let out the tiniest, sleepiest yawn. Soft yawn sound cue. The light flickered. A soft pulse, like a quiet response. Courage blinked. Then, carefully, he reached out one paw, slowly, very slowly, until it hovered just beneath the glow. Pause, subtle shimmer sound. The light didn't move away. It didn't startle. Instead, it lowered, just a little, until it brushed gently against his paw. Warm, not hot, not cold, just warm, like sunlight remembered at night. Soft musical tone. Courage's eyes softened. His paw relaxed, resting fully beneath the glow now. And the light stayed. Pause. For a moment, it felt like they were saying something to each other. Without words, just feeling, just presence. Long, gentle pause. Then slowly, the light drifted upward and began to move. Just a little, just ahead of him. Not far, just enough to be followed. Courage tilted his head again. He knew this feeling. It wasn't pulling him. It wasn't forcing him. It was inviting. Soft wind chime tone. So he stood up, shaking the sleep softly from his ears, and took a step forward, then another. The light moved too, slowly, gently, never rushing ahead, always staying just close enough. Rustling cornfield ambiance resumes. Together, they walked deeper into the field. The corn brushed softly against Courage's sides, like quiet hands guiding him through. The farmhouse, now farther behind, glowed faintly in the distance, but the night ahead was no longer empty. Pause. After a few moments, the light stopped. Courage stopped too. They had reached a small clearing, an open space where the grass was shorter and the sky felt bigger. The moon hung above them, round, calm, watching. Soft, airy music tone. The light drifted upward, hovering just below the moonlight, and began to glow a little brighter. Not harsh, just enough to illuminate the space around them. Courage looked around, and then he noticed something. Shapes. Soft, moving shapes, barely visible at first. Pause, faint echoing hum. They weren't solid. They weren't sharp. They were like shadows, but lighter, gentler, floating slowly through the clearing. Courage froze for a second. A tiny flicker of fear returned, but it didn't grow, because the light remained steady, calm, safe. Soft pulse from the light. The shapes drifted closer, moving like slow breaths in the air. And then one of them passed through the glow. For just a moment, it shimmered, and Courage saw it clearly. Not a monster. Not something frightening. Just a presence. Soft. Quiet. Almost like a memory. Floating through the night. Long pause. Courage's ears relaxed again. His tail gave a small, sleepy wag. The shapes continued to drift. Around him. Past him. Never touching. Never threatening. Just passing through. Ambient hum deepened slightly. The light pulsed again. Once. Twice. And this time, Courage felt it more clearly. These weren't things to fear. They were things that had stayed behind. Old feelings. Old nights. Old quiet moments. Lingering gently in the middle of nowhere. Soft piano note. Courage sat down again. Right there in the clearing. And watched. No barking. No running. No shaking. Just watching. Pause. One of the soft shapes drifted closer and paused, right in front of him. For a moment, it hovered there, as if it noticed him too. Courage blinked slowly. And then, very gently, he closed his eyes. long, slow breath. When he opened them again, the shape had drifted away, and the clearing felt even calmer than before. Wind softened. The light lowered again, coming back down beside him. Close, warm, steady. Like it was saying, "You're okay." Pause. Courage curled himself into a small ball, right there in the grass. The light hovered just above him, casting a soft glow, like a quiet lantern in the night, and the drifting shapes continued their slow, peaceful movement, fading in and out of the moonlight. Very soft, lullaby-like hum begins. In and out. The night breathed, and courage. For the first time, it began to understand that not everything strange was something to fear. Some things were just meant to be felt, and then gently let go. Long pause, slow fade of ambient sounds. Far away, the farmhouse remained still, wrapped in sleep. But out here, in the clearing, a small dog, a quiet light, and the soft echoes of the night rested together as time moved slower and softer and deeper into dreams. The soft lullaby hum from part 2 continues. But now, deeper, slower, the wind quieter, the night heavier. The clearing had grown still, too still, not empty, but listening. Long pause. Courage remained curled in the grass, his small body warm beneath the hovering glow. In and out, in and out. But something had changed. Very faint, low tone begins, almost unnoticeable. The drifting shapes, the soft, memory-like figures that once moved gently through the air, were fading, one by one, slipping away, like breath on cold glass. Pause. Courage's ears twitched, his eyes opened slowly. The light above him dimmed, just slightly. Not enough to frighten, but enough to notice. Soft hum flickers. He lifted his head. The clearing, once open and calm, now felt deeper, wider than before, as if the edges had moved farther away, or perhaps had disappeared altogether. Low wind passes through, slower now. Courage stood up. His paws pressed gently into the earth, but the ground felt different, softer, almost hollow beneath him. Subtle echo under footsteps. He looked toward the light. It flickered once, then steadied, but it did not move. Not this time. Pause. From somewhere beyond the clearing, a sound began. Faint, distant, like something dragging across dry soil, slowly, patiently. Dragging sound, very low, stretched out. Courage froze. His breath caught for just a moment. The old feeling returned, that familiar tightness, the instinct to run, to hide, to panic. Pause. But the light pulsed, softly, warmly, once, and courage did not run. Long pause. The sound grew closer, not louder, just nearer, as if distance itself was shrinking. The corn at the edges of the clearing began to sway, but there was no wind, not now. Slow rustling, uneven, unnatural. Courage's ears lowered. His eyes widened, but his body stayed still. The light hovered just beside him, closer than before, lower, almost touching him. Low hum strengthened slightly. Then, from the edge of the clearing, something appeared. Not all at once, not clearly, but in pieces. A shape, too tall, too thin, bending where it shouldn't bend. Pause. It didn't step forward. It unfolded. Slowly. Like something remembering how to exist. Courage took a step back. Just one. His paws silent against the soft ground. Low, distant creak sound. The shape leaned, tilting toward him, though it had no clear face. No eyes. No mouth. Just presence. Heavy. Watching. Long pause. The light dimmed again. Only slightly. But enough to cast longer shadows. Courage's breathing quickened. In. Out. Not as steady now. Heartbeat like bass tone, very faint. The shape moved. Not walking. Not gliding, but shifting. Like it was sliding through the space between moments. And with each movement, the ground beneath Courage's paws felt less real, less certain. Soft cracking sound underfoot. He looked down. The earth was not solid anymore. It was layered, thin, like sheets of something fragile, stacked over emptiness. Pause. He stepped back again. And this time, the ground gave slightly beneath him. A hollow sound, echoing downward, far deeper than it should. Echo fades into darkness. The shape tilted further, closer now. Still no face, still no sound, but the air around it felt cold. Not the gentle cool of night, but something older, something that had never known warmth. Low drone builds. Courage's body trembled, just a little, but he did not run, because the light, the small, steady light, remained beside him, still glowing, still holding, soft pulse. Then, for the first time, the shape reacted. It paused. Its movement stopped completely, as if it noticed the light. Long pause. Silence deepens. The air grew heavier. The space between them stretched, like time slowing down. The shape leaned back slightly. Not retreating, just hesitating. Faint distortion sound. And then, very slowly, it began to circle. Not around Courage, but around the clearing itself, tracing its edges, where the world had begun to thin. Soft, scraping loop, circular motion. As it moved, the darkness followed. Not chasing, but expanding, filling the spaces the drifting shapes had left behind. Pause. Courage turned slowly, keeping the shape in view. His eyes wide, his breathing shallow. The light moved with him, always beside him, always close. Gentle hum continues. And then, the ground beneath Courage's paws shifted again. A crack. Soft, but deep. Low, cracking echo. He looked down. A thin line had formed beneath him, stretching outward, toward the center of the clearing, toward something unseen. Pause. The shape stopped moving. It faced him again. Or rather, it turned toward where he stood. And for a moment, everything froze. The wind, the air, even the sound. Complete silence for a beat. Then, the crack beneath Courage spread, slowly, silently, opening into darkness. Not deep like a hole, but endless, like the absence of ground itself. Low, void like hum. Courage stumbled back, just enough to stay on solid earth. His heart raced now, but still, he did not run. Pause. The light brightened. Not suddenly, but steadily. Growing warmer. Stronger. Its glow pushing gently against the spreading darkness. Soft, rising tone. The crack stopped growing. just paused, held in place, as if something invisible was keeping it from widening further. Long pause. The shape did not move again. It stood, watching, waiting, but it did not come closer. And slowly, very slowly, it began to fade, not disappearing all at once, but dissolving, like smoke in the still air, piece by piece, until nothing remained. Dark tone fades out. The clearing returned. The ground steadied. The crack sealed itself without a trace. Soft wind returns. Courage stood there, breathing, shaking, but still standing. The light dimmed again, back to its gentle, steady glow. Pause, and for a long moment, nothing else happened. Just the quiet field, the soft moon above, and the small dog, who had faced something unknown and remained. Soft lullaby hum returns, calmer now. Courage slowly lowered himself back into the grass, his body curling inward again, closer this time to the light. The warmth returned. The calm returned. But somewhere deep inside, something had shifted. He was still afraid, but not the same way. Long pause. The light hovered above him, steady, watchful, as if it knew this was only the beginning. The clearing had returned, or at least it looked like it had. The grass lay still again. The sky stretched gently above, and the moon watched in silence. Long pause. Courage remained curled beside the light. But he was not asleep. Not anymore. His eyes were half open, watching, listening, waiting. Very faint, almost inaudible vibration begins. Something was still there. Not in front of him, not in the field, but beneath. Pause. The ground did not move. The air did not change, and yet there was a feeling. A quiet pressure, deep below the surface, as if something far beneath the earth was turning, very, very slowly. Low subterranean rumble, extremely soft. Courage's ears lifted slightly. His body stiffened, just enough to notice. The light above him pulsed once, gentle, but alert. Soft glow flicker. Then, the sound came again. Not louder, just clearer. A long, dragging shift, like something enormous adjusting its weight, far below where anything should be. Deep, slow movement. Sound. Courage slowly stood up. This time, his movement was careful. It began to circle. Not around Courage, but around the clearing itself, tracing its edges, where the world had begun to thin. Soft, scraping loop, circular motion. As it moved, the darkness followed. Not chasing, but expanding, filling the spaces the drifting shapes had left behind. Pause. Courage turned slowly, keeping the shape in view. His eyes wide, his breathing shallow. The light moved with him, always beside him, always close. Gentle hum continues. And then, the ground beneath Courage's paws shifted again. A crack. Soft, but deep. Low, cracking echo. He looked down. A thin line had formed beneath him, stretching outward, toward the center of the clearing, toward something unseen. Pause. The shape stopped moving. It faced him again. Or rather, It turned toward where he stood, and for a moment, everything froze. The wind, the air, even the sound. Complete silence for a beat. Then, the crack beneath Courage spread, slowly, silently, opening into darkness. Not deep like a hole, but endless, like the absence of ground itself. Low void like hum. Courage stumbled back, just enough to stay on solid earth. His heart raced now, but still, he did not run. Pause. The light brightened. Not suddenly, but steadily. Growing warmer, stronger. Its glow pushing gently against the spreading darkness. Soft, rising tone. The crack stopped growing. Just paused. Held in place. As if something invisible was keeping it from widening further. Long pause. The shape did not move again. It stood, watching, waiting, but it did not come closer. And slowly, very slowly, it began to fade. Not disappearing all at once, but dissolving, like smoke in the still air, piece by piece, until nothing remained. Dark tone fades out. The clearing returned. The ground steadied. The crack sealed itself without a trace. Soft wind returns. Courage stood there, breathing, shaking, but still standing. The light dimmed again, back to its gentle, steady glow. Pause, and for a long moment, nothing else happened. Just the quiet field, the soft moon above, and the small dog, who had faced something unknown and remained. Soft lullaby hum returns, calmer now. Courage slowly lowered himself back into the grass, his body curling inward again, closer this time to the light. The warmth returned, the calm returned, but somewhere deep inside, something had shifted. He was still afraid, but not the same way. Long pause. The light hovered above him, steady, watchful, as if it knew this was only the beginning. The clearing had returned, or at least it looked like it had. The grass lay still again. The sky stretched gently above, and the moon watched in silence. Long pause. Courage remained curled beside the light. But he was not asleep. Not anymore. His eyes were half open, watching, listening, waiting. Very faint, almost inaudible vibration begins. Something was still there. Not in front of him, not in the field, but beneath. Pause. The ground did not move. The air did not change, and yet there was a feeling. A quiet pressure, deep below the surface, as if something far beneath the earth was turning, very, very slowly. Low subterranean rumble, extremely soft. Courage's ears lifted slightly. His body stiffened, just enough to notice. The light above him pulsed once, gentle, but alert. Soft glow flicker. Then, the sound came again. Not louder, just clearer. A long, dragging shift, like something enormous adjusting its weight, far below where anything should be. Deep, slow movement. Sound. Courage slowly stood up. This time, his movement was careful, measured. His paws pressed lightly into the earth, as if he didn't trust it fully anymore. Pause. He looked around the clearing. Nothing. Everything looked the same. But the feeling remained. Low hum continues. The light drifted forward, just slightly. Not away, but toward the center of the clearing, the place where the crack had once opened. Courage hesitated. His instinct whispered to stay still, to go back, to return to the house, to Muriel, to safety. Pause, but something else, quieter, deeper, told him to follow. Soft chime tone. So he did. One step, then another. Slow, steady, only careful. The light hovered just ahead, guiding, never rushing. Ambient sound lowers, tension builds softly. As Courage reached the center, he stopped. The ground beneath him felt different again. Not hollow this time, not fragile, but tight, as if something below was pressing upward, just beneath the surface. Low pressure sound, like distant heartbeat under soil. Courage's breath slowed. His body lowered slightly, instinctively bracing. The light hovered directly above the spot. Still, focused. Pause. And then, the earth moved. Not cracking, not breaking, but rising. Just a little. A slow, subtle lift. Like something pushing gently from below. Deep, shifting earth sound. Courage stepped back quickly. His ears pinned down. His eyes wide. But still, he did not run. Long pause. The ground settled again. Flat. Still, as if nothing had happened. Silence. Then, it happened again. A little stronger this time. A slow upward swell, followed by a soft sinking back. Repeating deep pulse. Courage let out a small, nervous breath. The kind he used to let out before barking, but no bark came. Only quiet watching. Pause. The light pulsed again. Brighter this time. Its glow spreading outward, touching the grass, the air, space itself. Soft, expanding tone. And in that glow, something became visible. Not on the surface, but just beneath it. A shape, vast, slowly shifting, barely outlined, like a shadow trapped under thin glass. Low, heavy hum. Courage froze. The shape did not move quickly. It did not rise fully. It only turned, as if it were becoming aware. Pause. A long, curved form slid beneath the surface. Then another. Layered. Endless. Too large to fully see. Deep rumble grows slightly. Courage's body trembled now. Not from sudden fear, but from something deeper. Something ancient. Something that didn't belong to the world above. Pause. The ground rose again. Higher this time. Just enough to form a slight mound. Before slowly settling. Earth-shifting sound. And then, a sound came. Not from above. Not from the air. But from within the earth itself. A low, distant, almost, voice. Not words. Not language. But something close to it. Deep, echoing tone. Like something trying to speak. Courage stepped back again. The light moved with him. Never leaving his side. Soft glow steady. The shape beneath the ground. Still, completely. As if it were listening. To him. To the light. To something else entirely. Long silence. Then, slowly, very slowly, a single point beneath the surface began to glow. Faint. Dim. Like a reflection of the light above. Pause. Courage tilted his head. Confused. The glow below grew slightly brighter. Not threatening. Not aggressive. Just present. Soft hum blends with deeper tone. The great shape shifted again. But this time, not toward him, not upward, but away, receding, sinking deeper into the unseen layers below. Deep fading movement. The ground flattened. The pressure lifted. The hum softened. And the faint glow beneath slowly disappeared. Long pause. The clearing was still again. Truly still. No movement. No hidden shifting. Just quiet earth. Soft wind returns gently. Courage stood there, breathing slowly. His body still tense, but easing. The light dimmed back to its gentle warmth, hovering beside him, unmoving, steady. Pause. For a moment, neither of them moved, as if they were both listening, making sure it was really gone. Long silence. Then, very gently, Courage sat down, his legs folding beneath him, his body lowering back into the grass. The light followed, hovering just above, like a quiet guardian. Soft lullaby hum returns, and slowly, very slowly, the tension left his body. Not completely, but enough. Enough to rest again. Pause. The night deepened. The moon drifted slightly higher, and somewhere far below, whatever had stirred had chosen to remain in the dark. Very soft, fading hum. Courage curled in again, closer to the light than before, as if he understood now just how much it mattered. Long, slow breathing rhythm resumes. In and out, in and out, and above him, the small glowing light remained, watching, protecting, waiting. The clearing rested again, quiet, still, unchanged on the surface. But beneath that stillness, something lingered. Long pause. Courage lay curled tightly in the mass, closer to the light than ever before. His small body pressed gently into the earth, as if trying to stay grounded, as if he could feel how thin the world had become tonight. Soft breath in, out. The light hovered just above him, steady, warm, faithful. Pause. For a while, everything remained calm. The wind barely moved. The cornfield stood quiet. Even the distant sounds of the night had softened into near silence. Very faint, high-pitched tone begins, barely noticeable. Then, slowly, something began to change. Not in the ground, not in the air, but in the light itself. Pause. Its glow flickered. Once, twice. Very faint. So faint that Courage almost didn't notice. Soft flicker sound. He shifted slightly, his ears twitching. His eyes opened halfway. The light steadied again, as if nothing had happened. Pause. But then, it flickered again. This time, a little longer. Soft, dimming tone. Courage sat up slowly, his body alert, but quiet. The familiar warmth, the steady comfort the light had given him, felt thinner, less certain. Low, ambient tone creeps in. The light dimmed, just a fraction, but enough. Enough to feel. Pause. Courage let out a soft whimper. Not loud, not panicked, just concerned. Gentle sound. He stepped closer, lifting one paw again, just as he had before. Slowly, carefully, until it rested beneath the glow. Soft contact, though. The warmth was still there, but weaker, fainter, like something was pulling it away. Low, distant pull-like sound. Courage's ears lowered. He looked around the clearing. Nothing. No shapes. No movement. No sign of the tall figure, or the thing beneath the earth. And yet, the feeling returned. Not fear. Not exactly. But absence. Pause. As if something unseen was slowly taking the light away. Long silence. The glow flickered again. Longer this time. And in that moment, the clearing darkened. Just slightly. But enough for the shadows to stretch. Deepening ambient tone. Courage's breathing quickened. In. Out. Not steady now. Pause. The light pulsed once. But the pulse was weak. Like a heartbeat slowing down. Soft, fading pulse. Courage stepped even closer. His small body now directly beneath it. As if trying to hold it up. As if trying to keep it from drifting away. Pause. And then, for the first time, the light spoke. Not with words. Not with sound, but with feeling. Soft, emotional swell. A quiet, gentle, tired feeling. Like it had been holding something back for a very long time. And now, it was struggling. Long pause. Courage's eyes widened. He didn't understand completely. But he felt enough. Enough to know, the light needed him now. Soft, rising tone. The glow dimmed again. And this time, it did not fully return. Silence deepens. The clearing darkened further. The moon above seemed distant now, like it was slipping behind something unseen. Faint shadow movement across sky. Courage looked up. Star, one by one, began to fade. Not disappearing, just dimming. Pause. The world was growing quieter, but not in a peaceful way. In a hollow way. Low, empty wind sound. The ground beneath him felt cold again. Not alive. Not shifting. Just empty. Pause. Courage trembled. His small body shaking gently. But he didn't move away. He stayed. Right beneath the fading light. Soft whimper. And then, very slowly, he did something different. Something he had not done all night. Pause. He leaned forward and pressed himself gently against the light. Not reaching. Not testing. Just resting against it. Soft contact hum. Warmer tone emerges faintly. For a moment, nothing changed. The light remained dim. Faint. Almost gone. Long pause. Then, very softly, something responded. A small warmth. Not from the light, but from Courage himself. Gentle internal glow tone. His breathing slowed. His body softened. Even as the darkness pressed in, he stayed calm. Stayed present. Stayed close. Pause. The light flickered again. But this time, it didn't weaken. It held. Just barely. Soft, stabilizing tone. Courage remained there. Still. Quiet. Not afraid of what might come. Not running from what he didn't understand. Just staying. Long, slow silence. And slowly, very slowly, the glow began to return. Not strong, not bright, but steady. Gentle pulse resumes. The shadows stopped growing. The sky above held its dim stars in place. And the clearing stopped slipping into emptiness. Pause. The light hovered just above him again. Closer now than ever before. Almost touching. As if it had drawn strength from his presence. Soft, emotional swell. Courage lay down once more. But this time, he didn't curl away. He stayed open, facing the light, eyes half closed, but watching. Gentle lullaby hum returned. The night remained fragile, still uncertain, but no longer fading. Long pause, and somewhere, far beyond the clearing, something watched. Not the tall shape, not the thing beneath the earth, but something older still. Something that had been waiting for the light to go out. Very faint, distant presence tone. But tonight, it had not. Pause. Because a small, trembling dog had chosen to stay. Slow fade into warm, steady hum. The light pulsed gently above him. Alive again. Not as strong as before, but enough. Enough to continue. Enough to protect. Soft breathing rhythm resumes. In and out. In and out. The night held its breath and did not break. The clearing remained quiet, whole, unbroken. Long pause. Courage lay in the grass, his small body resting peacefully, his breathing slow, steady. In and out. In and out. Above him, the light hovered. Not flickering now, not fading, just present. Soft, golden tone. The darkness that had once pressed in, the hollow feeling, the slow pulling away, was gone. Or perhaps it had simply stopped trying. Pause. Courage's eyes opened slightly. Not wide, not afraid, just aware. He looked up at the light, and for the first time, he didn't feel like he was following it. He felt like he understood it. Soft chime. The light pulsed gently. A quiet rhythm, like a heartbeat that no longer struggled. Steady, calm, certain. Pause. And then, very slowly, the world began to change. Not suddenly, not sharply, but gently, like the night itself was turning a page. Faint early dawn breeze enters. The sky above, still dark, began to soften. Not brighter yet, but lighter in feeling. The stars held their place, but seemed less distant. Long pause. Courage stretched slightly. His small paws pressing into the earth, testing it again. The ground felt solid, warm, real, soft earth tone. No hollow echo, no shifting beneath. No hidden movement, just ground. Pause. The cornfield at the edges of the clearing stood still, but not silent. A gentle breeze returned, moving through the stalks, like a soft whisper welcoming the morning. Light rustling resumes, calm and natural. Courage stood up slowly. He looked around. The clearing was smaller again. Not endless, not stretched. Just a simple open space in the middle of nowhere. Pause. The light drifted upward slightly. Not leaving, just rising, as if it could finally rest without holding so tightly. Soft lift tone. Courage watched it. His ears relaxed. His tail gave a slow, gentle wag. Pause. For a moment, they simply stayed there, together. No danger, no tension, no unseen weight beneath the world. Long, peaceful silence. Then, very quietly, the light began to move, not deeper into the field, and not toward the dark, but back, toward the farmhouse. Soft, guiding tone. Courage blinked once. He looked behind him, and in the distance, he could see it again. The old house. Small. Still. Waiting. Pause. He turned back to the light. It hovered there, as if asking, without asking. Gentle pulse. Courage took a step forward, then another, and together, they began to walk. Soft footsteps in grass, steady rhythm. The path back felt shorter, easier. The corn brushed against him again, but this time, it felt familiar, comforting, like it remembered him, just as he remembered it. Pause. The sky continued to soften. A faint hint of early dawn, barely visible, but quietly approaching. Very light ambient shift toward morning. Courage reached the edge of the field. The farmhouse stood just ahead. Warm. Still. Home. Pause. The porch creaked softly as he stepped onto it. The wooden boards felt steady beneath his paws. Unchanged. Safe. Soft wood creak. He turned to look at the light one more time. It hovered at the edge of the porch now. Not coming inside. Not leaving either. Just there. Long pause. Courage tilted his head. His eyes soft. Grateful. In the quiet way he understood. Gentle, emotional swell. The light pulsed once. Warm. Bright. Then slowly, it drifted backward. Away from the porch. Back toward the field. But not disappearing. Never disappearing. Soft. Friendship did not arrive all at once for them. It never does. Especially not for people who have spent too long surviving instead of living. For Lance, Ilana, and Octus, friendship began in the spaces between danger. In shared silence after running. In tired laughter after confusion. In the moments where no one had the energy left to pretend anymore. Sherman, Illinois didn't force them together. It simply gave them time long enough for them to notice each other. And that made all the difference. Lance was the first to act like he didn't care. That was his way. Sarcasm first. Concern later. Vulnerability never announced. He walked slightly ahead when they moved through town, as if he was always checking for something that might go wrong. But he also slowed down when Ilana fell behind. And he always, without admitting it, made sure Octus wasn't too far away when things got crowded or loud. He would never say it out loud, but he was watching the group, not as a leader, not as a protector, just as someone who had been alone too long to risk losing people again. Ilana was the quiet center. Not because she was passive, but because she listened before she spoke. She noticed things others didn't. The way Lance's tone changed when he was tired. The way Octus paused slightly longer when he was uncertain. The way Sherman's small human moments seemed to soften both of them without effort. She didn't try to fix them. She simply stayed close enough that they didn't feel like they had to carry everything alone. Sometimes she would sit beside Lance without speaking. Sometimes she would walk beside Octus while he processed something silently. And in those moments, she became something steady. Not a leader. Not a follower. Just a presence that made the world feel less sharp. Octus did not understand friendship at first. He understood systems. He understood patterns. He understood logic. But friendship was not a system that explained itself easily. It was inconsistent, emotional, unpredictable. Still, he tried. He observed Lance's humor, Ilana's quiet empathy, the way they responded to each other without needing instruction. And slowly, something within him began to adapt. Not because he was programmed to, but because proximity creates change even in machines that believe they are fixed. He started speaking less formally around them. He started pausing before giving answers. And sometimes he even asked questions that had no practical purpose. One evening in Sherman, the three found themselves sitting on the same park bench again. The sky was orange, fading into deep blue. Streetlights were just beginning to turn on. The town was entering its soft night phase. Lance leaned back first. "I don't get it," he muttered. Ilana looked toward him. "What don't you get?" He gestured vaguely at everything. "This, us, how we ended up like this." Octus tilted his head. "Define like this." Lance sighed. "Not fighting, not running, just sitting in a park like normal people." Ilana smiled faintly. "I think that's the point." Lance frowned slightly. "What point?" "That we can sit in a park without everything falling apart." That made him quiet, because he didn't have a response to that. Not a sarcastic one, not a defensive one, just silence. Octus spoke after a moment. "I have analyzed our behavioral patterns since arrival on Earth." Lance groaned lightly. "Here we go." Octus continued anyway. "Conclusion. Our group stability increases in environments with low threat probability and high social normalcy indicators." Ilana nodded slowly. "That sounds right." Lance pointed at Octus. "You just called friendship low threat probability." Octus paused. "That is one interpretation." Ilana laughed softly, and Lance, despite himself, smiled, because even Octus's strange way of understanding things had become comforting. It meant he was trying. There were nights when friendship felt obvious, like sitting together at the diner while rain tapped against the windows, or walking home in silence without it feeling uncomfortable, or sharing food they didn't fully understand but still enjoyed anyway. And there were other nights when it felt fragile, like something that could disappear if spoken about too directly. But it never did. It stayed, quietly, steadily, like Sherman itself. One night, after a long, quiet walk through town, Ilana stopped near a streetlight. Lance noticed immediately. "What?" She looked at both of them. "I think I understand something about us." Octus turned slightly. "Explain." She thought for a moment. "We don't really know how to be safe alone." That sentence landed softly. Lance didn't joke. Octus didn't calculate, because it was true in a way that didn't need correction. Ilana continued. "But together, it feels a little easier." A pause. Then Lance gave a small shrug. "Yeah." Octus nodded once. "Confirmed." And that was it. No dramatic declaration. No emotional speech. Just agreement. Simple. Honest. Enough. Friendship for them was not built in big moments. It was built in repetition. Walking the same streets. Sharing the same silences. Returning to the same places without needing to decide if they belonged there. Sherman became the background where their bond quietly formed with Ilana. And they became people who, without realizing it, started looking for each other when something felt off. That was the change. Not dependence. Not obligation. Recognition. And so, under the soft glow of Sherman's streetlights, three travelers from another world continued learning something they had almost forgotten. That survival keeps you alive, but friendship keeps you human. And sometimes, that is the gentlest kind of rescue there is. Friendship doesn't usually announce itself. It doesn't arrive with a clear moment where everything suddenly changes. For Lance, Ilana, and Octus, it arrived in fragments. Small, almost forgettable pieces of time that only became meaningful when they were looked back on later. Sherman continued to be their quiet classroom for something none of them had been taught before. How to exist together without preparing for impact. One of the earliest signs of change was how they started walking. At first, they moved like a cautious triangle. Lance slightly ahead. Ilana in the middle. Octus trailing just behind, scanning everything. But over time, the spacing softened. Not deliberately, just naturally. Lance stopped checking over his shoulder as often. Ilana stopped trying to keep perfect alignment between them. Octus stopped maintaining strict distance calculations. And slowly, without discussion, they began walking like a group that belonged in the same space. Not coordinated, just together. It happened one evening near the edge of Sherman. The sky was heavy with soft clouds, glowing faintly orange from the setting sun. They had been walking without purpose, something they were slowly learning how to do. No urgency. Just movement through a town that no longer felt unfamiliar. Lance kicked a small pebble off the sidewalk. "I still don't get Earth schedules," he muttered. Ilana glanced at him. "What do you mean?" "Everything here has timing." Octus responded immediately. "That is accurate. Earth societies rely on structured temporal organization." Lance pointed at him. "You're doing it again." "Explaining?" "Yes. Stop explaining existence like it's a report." Ilana smiled faintly. "I think you can't help it." Octus paused. "That is partially correct." Lance sighed. "See? But there was no real frustration in it anymore. Only familiarity. They passed a small residential street where porch lights flickered on one by one. Somewhere nearby, someone was grilling food. Smell drifted through the warm air. Ilana slowed slightly. "That smells nice." Lance nodded. "Yeah, everything here smells like people actually live here." Octus processed that. "Do uninhabited environments smell different?" Lance looked at him. "You really need to go outside less." "I am currently outside." "That's not what I meant." Ilana laughed softly. And Lance didn't stop her this time. He just walked beside her. Later that night, they found themselves at the small park again. It had become a shared place without agreement. The swings creaked gently in the wind. The grass moved softly under fading lights, and the town beyond it continued its quiet rhythm of evening routines. Ilana sat on the swing first. Lance followed a moment later. Octus remained standing, but closer than before. No one commented on it. It simply was. Lance leaned back. "I think I'm starting to understand something," he said. Ilana looked toward him. "Oh?" He hesitated, and then shrugged. "This place doesn't care who we were before." That sentence made the air feel still, because it was true. Sherman had no memory of Gallaluna, no knowledge of war, no expectation of who they had been or what they had done. It only responded to who they were now. Ilana replied softly. "Maybe that's why it feels safe." Lance nodded slowly. "Yeah." A pause. "Because we don't have to explain ourselves." Octus spoke after a moment. "Identity reinforcement appears to be influenced by external acceptance." Lance groaned lightly. I really tried." Ilana smiled. "But he's not wrong." That surprised Lance slightly. He looked at her. "You're defending him now?" "I think I always have been." Octus tilted his head. That is consistent with observed behavioral patterns. Lance pointed at him again. I'm going to start ignoring your conclusions. But even as he said it, he was smiling. Because Octus, being Octus, had become part of the group. Not an outsider. Not a tool. Just Octus. One night, something small happened. Something that would have been meaningless to anyone else. But not to them. They were walking back from the diner after a late meal. The streets were nearly empty. The air was cool and still, and Ilana stumbled slightly on an uneven part of the sidewalk. It was minor, barely noticeable, but Lance reached out instinctively and steadied her. No hesitation, no thought, just reaction. Ilana blinked slightly. Thanks. Lance shrugged immediately. Yeah. And they kept walking. No pause, no emphasis, but Octus had noticed. Later he spoke quietly. You exhibited protective reflex behavior. Lance frowned. What does that mean? It indicates instinctive social safeguarding toward group member stability. Lance looked at him. You mean I didn't let her fall? Yes. Didn't say that. I am attempting precision. Ilana smiled. I think that was precision. Lance sighed. Why does everything with you sound like a research paper? Octus paused. That is my processing style. And then after a beat. But I understand the action was appropriate. Lance blinked, then looked away slightly. Yeah, well, obviously. But his ears were faintly red. That night, as they reached their temporary place to stay, Ilana lingered outside for a moment. Lance noticed. What now? Oh, she looked at the quiet town. I think I'm starting to trust it. Lance leaned against the wall. The town? She shook her head slightly. You two. That made Lance stop for a second. Not dramatically. Just enough. Octus turned toward her. Trust is a high-value relational metric. Ilana smiled softly. I know. Lance looked between them. You say things like that like it's normal. Ilana replied gently. Maybe it is becoming normal. Silence followed. Not awkward. Just full. Comfortable in a way none of them would have recognized before Sherman. The night wind moved softly through the streets. A distant porch light flickered. Somewhere a dog barked once and went quiet again. And the town continued resting, holding them gently in its ordinary rhythm. Lance eventually spoke. I don't think I'd survive alone here. Ilana glanced at him. You don't have to, Octus added calmly. Group survival probability increases with cooperative cohesion. Lance groaned lightly. Stop making it sound like math. But this time he didn't push it away. He just stood there with them. And in that moment, under the quiet sky of Sherman, something unspoken settled into place. They were no longer just three travelers sharing space. They were becoming something else. Something softer. Something steady. Something that did not fall apart when silence arrived. A small, unlikely friendship formed not through words, but through presence. Through staying. Through choosing again and again to remain close enough to matter. There is a point in every friendship where silence stops feeling uncertain. For Lance, Ilana, and Octus, that point arrived quietly. Not with a conversation, not with a decision, but with time. Time spent walking the same streets. Time spent sitting beside each other without needing to fill every moment with words. time spent existing in Sherman long enough for the town's calm rhythm to slowly reshape their own. One evening, they found themselves sitting on the steps outside a closed community center. It had become one of their unspoken gathering places. A space that didn't belong to any of them, but also didn't reject them. The sky above was deep blue fading into black. Streetlights hummed softly in the distance. The air was cool, carrying the faint smell of rain that might arrive later in the night. Ilana sat with her knees pulled slightly toward her chest. Lance leaned back on his hands, watching nothing in particular. Octus stood nearby at first, then slowly, almost experimentally, sat on the step as well. Nobody commented on it. But Ilana noticed, and she smiled a little. Lance broke the silence first. "This place is messing with my sense of urgency." Ilana glanced at him. "What do you mean?" "I keep feeling like I should be doing something important." Octus responded immediately. "Current environmental conditions do not indicate imminent threat scenarios." Lance pointed without looking. That's what I mean. You sound like the town itself." Octus paused. "That is not intended as identification with infrastructure." Ilana let out a soft laugh. "It kind of fits you, though." Octus considered this. "I will log that observation." Lance groaned. "Please don't log our personalities." A quiet breeze moved through the street. Somewhere nearby, a car passed slowly, tires soft against asphalt. The world felt distant. Not empty. Just far away enough to be calm. Ilana looked toward the quiet street. "I think silence here feels different," she said softly. Lance tilted his head. "How so?" "It doesn't feel like something missing." That made both of them pause, because they understood what she meant immediately. Silence on Gallaluna had often meant danger, aftermath, waiting. But silence in Sherman felt like rest. Octus spoke after a moment. "Silence appears to function as a stabilizing environmental condition in this region." Lance sighed. "You really can't just let silence be silence, huh?" "I am describing observed data." Ilana smiled faintly. "I think he's trying to understand it the way he understands everything else." Lance looked at her. "And does it work?" She thought for a moment. "Sometimes." They sat there for a long while. No one rushed to leave. No one filled the space with unnecessary words. And slowly, something subtle happened. The absence of urgency stopped feeling strange. It started feeling familiar, like a rhythm they had finally learned how to match. At one point, Lance spoke again, quieter this time. "You ever think about how weird it is that we ended up here?" Ilana nodded slightly. "All the time," Octus added calmly. "Probability of arrival on Earth under our original conditions was statistically low." Lance looked at him. "You're going to turn our lives into a math problem again, aren't you?" "I am observing causality." Ilana smiled. "I think it's less about probability," she said softly, "and more about what we do after we arrive." That made Lance go quiet, because that part mattered more. The wind picked up slightly. Leaves rustled along the edges of the street. Somewhere in the distance, a porch light turned off, and Sherman was going to sleep. And in that transition between evening and night, the town felt like it was breathing slowly around them. Ilana leaned back slightly, looking upward. "I used to think home was something you lost," she said. Lance glanced at her. "And now?" She hesitated. "Now I think it might be something you rebuild." Octus responded quietly. "Reconstruction of emotional anchoring systems aligns with adaptive recovery behavior." Lance groaned softly. Why do you always ruin deep thoughts with science words? Octus tilted his head. I do not intend to ruin them. Ilana laughed softly again. And Lance didn't interrupt it. He just listened. Because even Octus's awkward way of engaging had become part of their shared rhythm. And eventually Lance stretched his arm slightly. I don't hate this, he admitted. Ilana looked at him. Sherman? Yeah? A pause. I thought I would. Ilana smiled. I think it grows on people. Octus added. Environmental familiarity increases over time through repeated exposure. Lance pointed without looking. You're banned from phrasing feelings like a textbook. But his tone was lighter now. Less defensive. More comfortable. A few more minutes passed. The night deepened. The street lights became the brightest things in view. And still, none of them moved to leave. That in itself was new. In the past, staying still had meant vulnerability. Now it meant rest. Ilana spoke softly. I think this is what friendship feels like. Lance looked at her. What? Not having to leave right away. That idea settled between them gently. Not dramatic. Not profound in a loud way. Just true. Octus spoke last. Conclusion. Group cohesion is stable under current environmental conditions. Lance sighed. Why do you always make everything sound temporary and permanent at the same time? Octus paused. That is not intentional. Ilana smiled. I think he means we're okay. Lance leaned back again. Yeah. A beat. We're okay. And for a moment, nothing else needed to be added. No explanation. No analysis and no planning. Just three travelers sitting on stone steps in a quiet town that had started to feel like it recognized them. Not as heroes. Not as refugees. Not as strangers. But simply as people who had decided for now to stay. By the time Sherman had become familiar, something subtle had already shifted between them. Not in what they said, but in how little they needed to explain anymore. Lance, Ilana, and Octus were still very different from each other. That had not changed, but the space between those differences had softened, like rough edges worn down by time and repetition, like stones in a river that slowly learn how to sit beside each other without conflict. One morning they ended up at the local diner again. It had become a quiet routine without anyone agreeing to it. Same booth. Same warm light. Same tired morning atmosphere where the world had not yet fully decided to become busy. A waitress placed 3 simple meals down without asking many questions. Refills? She asked gently. Lance nodded. Yeah, thanks. Ilana watched the interaction carefully. You noticed that? She asked quietly after the waitress left. What? Lance replied. She didn't question us. Lance shrugged. That's normal here. Ilana looked down at her cup. I think I'm still not used to normal. Octus spoke calmly. Adaptation timelines vary between individuals. Lance pointed slightly. There you go again. I am providing context. Stop providing context. Ilana smiled faintly. But there was something thoughtful behind her expression. Because even simple interactions like this still felt new. Still unfamiliar. Still gently healing something they didn't fully name. Outside the diner window, Sherman was already awake. People walking to work. Students heading toward school. Cars moving slowly through morning intersections. Everything ordinary. Everything steady. Ilana watched it for a long moment. It's strange, she said softly. What is? Octus asked. How nothing feels urgent here. Lance leaned back slightly. That's because nothing is trying to kill us. Ilana glanced at him. That helps. Lance nodded. Yeah, it really does. After breakfast, they walked through town together. No destination, just movement. A small habit they were developing without realizing it. Sherman sidewalks had begun to feel familiar under their steps. Corners they recognized. Stores they had passed before. Streetlights they now remembered without thinking. Octus walked slightly behind them at first, observing again as always. But at some point, he matched their pace. Not because he was told to, but because he had learned it. Lance noticed. Hey, he said casually. You're walking with us now. Octus responded after a brief pause. I have adjusted locomotion synchronization. Lance smiled. That's the closest thing you've ever said to, I'm part of the group. Octus considered this. Interpretation is acceptable. Ilana laughed softly. And even Octus didn't correct her reaction. They passed the park again. It had become a kind of shared landmark between them. A place that didn't belong to any single memory, but collected them slowly over time. Children were playing there now. A parent sitting on a bench watching quietly. Leaves moving gently in the breeze. Ilana slowed slightly. Do you think people here realize how peaceful this is? She asked. Lance shook his head. Probably not. Why not? Because they've always had it. That answer lingered. Because it made sense. Peace is hardest to recognize when it has always been present. Octus spoke. Environmental normalization reduces perception of exceptional conditions. Lance groaned lightly. You're doing it again. Ilana smiled. But he's right. Lance looked at her. Are you on his side now? I think I'm on understanding's side. That made him pause. Then he shrugged. Fair enough. They continued walking. The town moved around them gently. Nothing dramatic. Nothing urgent. Just life continuing at a steady pace. And slowly, without realizing it, they began matching that pace too. Later that day, something small happened. Something that would have been meaningless anywhere else. But here, it mattered. They were walking near a corner store when a small group of students passed by, laughing loudly. One of them accidentally bumped into Lance. Sorry, the student said quickly. Lance instinctively tensed for half a second. Old reflex. Old life. Then he relaxed. It's fine, he said simply. And the students moved on. No suspicion. No fear. No second glance. Ilana noticed his reaction soften afterward. You didn't overthink that, she said quietly. Lance shrugged. Didn't need to. That sentence was new for him. And he noticed it too. Octus spoke. Reduced threat response frequency indicates adaptation progress. Lance pointed at him without looking. You are permanently banned from summarizing my emotional growth. Octus paused. I acknowledged the restriction. Ilana laughed softly again. It was becoming easier now. Easier to laugh. Easier to exist. Easier to be near each other without tension sitting between every moment. As afternoon turned into early evening, they returned to a quieter street near the edge of town. A place where trees leaned slightly over sidewalks. Where houses were spaced farther apart. Where the sky felt bigger. They stopped there without speaking. Not because anything was wrong, but because stopping had started to feel natural. Ilana looked upward. I used to think friendship meant knowing everything about someone, she said softly. Lance glanced at her. And now? She thought for a moment. Now I think it means not needing to. That idea settled quietly. Simple. Clear. True. Octus spoke last. Observation. Relational stability is maintained through consistent proximity and shared experience. Lance sighed lightly. Still sounds like a lab report. Ilana smiled. But it means we're doing okay. Octus paused. Correct. And this time Lance didn't argue. The evening light softened across Sherman. Golden tones stretching over rooftops. Long shadows forming along sidewalks. The town slowly transitioning toward night again. And the three of them stood there together in that fading light. Not needing direction. Not needing urgency. Just present. Just together. And somewhere in that quiet, ordinary moment, their friendship stopped feeling like something forming and started feeling like something already real. There comes a point in every quiet friendship where effort begins to disappear. Not all at once, not dramatically, but slowly, almost invisibly, the need to figure each other out starts to fade. For Lance, Ilana, and Octus, that point arrived in Sherman without announcement. One day, they simply realized they were no longer adjusting to each other. They were just together. That evening, they found themselves at the diner again. Not because they planned it, but because they didn't need to plan it anymore. The booth felt familiar now. The lighting no longer strange. Even the quiet hum of the refrigerator in the background had become part of the atmosphere they recognized. The waitress greeted them with a small smile. Same as usual? Lance blinked. Apparently we have a usual now. Ilana smiled softly. I guess we do? Octus added calmly. Routine formation confirmed. Lance pointed without looking. Stop labeling our lives like a science project. But there was no real frustration behind it anymore. Only comfort. They ate quietly for a while. Not awkwardly. Just peacefully. The kind of silence that doesn't ask to be filled. Ilana looked out the window. Outside, Sherman moved slowly under night lights. People walking home. Cars passing gently. A town that never felt like it was in a hurry to become anything else. I think I understand something now, she said softly. Lance looked up. What? Why this place works for us? Octus turned slightly. Explain. Ilana thought carefully. Because it doesn't demand anything from us. That sentence stayed in the air longer than expected. Because neither Lance nor Octus disagreed. Lance leaned back in his seat. I used to think being somewhere safe would feel boring. He paused. It doesn't. Ilana looked at him. What does it feel like? He hesitated. Then shrugged slightly. Quiet. Octus responded. Quiet environments correlate with reduced cognitive stress load. Lance sighed. You're banned from interpreting peace. Octus nodded once. Understood. Ilana smiled faintly. But she was watching Lance more closely now. Because that answer mattered. Quiet had become something new for him. Not emptiness, not boredom, just space. After dinner, they stepped outside into cool night air. The sky above Sherman was clear. Stars scattered like soft, distant thoughts. The sidewalks reflected faint golden light from street lamps. Everything felt still, not frozen, just resting. Lance stretched slightly. I think I'm starting to like this town too much, he muttered. Ilana glanced at him. That sounds like a problem. Yeah. A pause. I don't care. That made her smile. Because it wasn't sarcasm. It was honesty. They walked without direction again. a habit that had slowly become part of them. Sherman's streets no longer required mapping in their minds. They were starting to remember, not intentionally, just through repetition. Octus walked beside them this time without distance. Completely. No trailing, no scanning. Just presence. Lance noticed. "You're really staying with us now," he said casually. Octus responded. Affirmative. Lance nodded. Okay. That was all. No surprise anymore. Just acceptance. At one point, they passed a small house where music played softly through an open window. Someone was practicing piano inside. Not perfectly. Not professionally. Just slowly. Carefully. Ilana stopped briefly. "That sounds nice," she said. Lance nodded. "Yeah," Octus added. "Musical patterns indicate emotional regulation behavior." Lance immediately pointed. "You're still doing it." Octus paused. "Noted." Ilana laughed softly, and the sound felt easier now, more natural. Less careful. Later, they reached the small park again. It had become their unspoken meeting point with the night. The swings creaked gently. The grass moved softly under wind. Streetlights painted long shadows across the ground. They didn't sit immediately. They just stood there for a moment, listening, breathing, being. Then Ilana sat on the swing. Lance followed. Octus stood nearby, but closer than before. That small change mattered more than anything said out loud. Lance spoke first. "I think I get it now." Ilana looked at him. "What? Why we keep coming here?" He gestured slightly around the park. "It's the only place where nothing is trying to pull us somewhere else." "Or?" Ilana nodded slowly. "Yeah." A pause. "That's what makes it feel safe." Octus spoke quietly. "Environmental stability contributes to perceived relational security." Lance sighed lightly. "You are physically incapable of not sounding like a manual." Octus replied. "That is acceptable feedback." Ilana smiled. But this time even Lance didn't argue. Because the meaning behind the words was clear enough now. Time passed slowly. The wind softened. The town grew quieter. Even distant sounds felt farther away than before. And in that stillness, something subtle settled over them. Not realization. Not change. Something more permanent than that. Recognition. Lance leaned back on the swing. "I don't think I was ever good at this," he said quietly. Ilana looked at him. "At what?" He hesitated. "Being around people without expecting it to fall apart." That honesty landed softly between them. Octus responded after a moment. "Current evidence suggests stability is improving." Oh, Lance glanced at him. "That's your version of reassurance, isn't it?" "Yes." Ilana smiled gently. "I think it's enough." A long silence followed. Not empty. Full. Comfortable. Sherman rested around them like a quiet promise. And for the first time, none of them felt the need to leave the moment quickly. Eventually, Lance spoke again. "I think we're a team now." Ilana looked at him. "Yeah." Octus added simply. "Confirmed." Lance nodded. "Weird." Ilana smiled. "Good weird?" He thought for a moment. "Yeah." A pause. "Good weird." And that was it. No ceremony. No declaration. Just three people sitting under a quiet sky in a town that had slowly, gently become theirs. Not because it claimed them, but because it allowed them to stay long enough to choose each other. Before sunrise, Sherman always feels like it belongs to no one. The streets are empty. The sky is pale and unfinished. Even the street lights feel like they are waiting to be turned off. It is the hour where everything is between states. Night not fully gone. Morning not fully arrived. And for Lance, Ilana, and Octus, it had become the time they understood best, because they too were still between states. They stood at the edge of town near a quiet road. No destination, no urgency. Just the slow arrival of light across distant rooftops. Ilana pulled her jacket slightly tighter around herself. "It feels different now," she said softly. Lance looked ahead. "How?" "Oh," she paused. "Like we're not just passing through anymore." That sentence didn't feel dramatic, but it felt true. Octus observed the horizon. Environmental familiarity has increased by approximately measurable behavioral indicators. Lance immediately sighed. "You can't even watch a sunrise without turning it into data." Octus replied calmly. "Sunrise is a measurable event." Ilana smiled faintly. "But it's also peaceful." Octus paused. "Both statements are valid." Lance shook his head slightly. "That's the closest you've ever come to poetry." They began walking again slowly. Back toward the center of town, Sherman was waking up around them. A few porch lights turning on. The distant sound of a radio inside a house. A mailbox opening. A dog stretching lazily in a yard. Everything moving gently into morning. And this time, none of it felt unfamiliar. It felt shared. Lance broke the silence. "I used to think friendship meant having a lot in common." Ilana glanced at him. "And now?" He shrugged slightly. "Now I think it's just not walking away." That answer lingered. Because it wasn't perfect. But it was real. Ilana nodded slowly. "I think it's also choosing to stay even when things feel quiet." Lance looked at her. "Quiet still freaks me out sometimes." She smiled. "Me too." Octus added, "Quiet environments initially trigger uncertainty in many species due to reduced predictive stimuli." Lance pointed at him. "You were so close to not ruining that." Octus paused. "I will adjust phrasing." Ilana laughed softly, and the sound carried easily into the morning air. They reached the park again without planning to. It had become instinct more than decision. The swings moved gently in the wind. The grass was damp with early dew. The sky above was slowly turning gold at the edges. They stopped there, as they always seemed to. Ilana sat on the swing first. Lance followed. Octus stood nearby, but this time he leaned slightly against the frame of the swing set. A subtle change. Small, but meaningful. Lance looked up at the sky. "I think this place is getting into my head," he said. Ilana asked softly. "In a bad way?" He thought for a moment. "No." A pause. "In a quiet way." That felt accurate. Octus spoke. "Long-term exposure to stable environments correlates with reduced threat-based cognition." Lance groaned lightly. "I asked for less science, and you gave me more science." Octus replied. "Adjustment noted." Ilana smiled. "But he's right." Lance looked at her. "You keep agreeing with him lately." "I think I'm agreeing with reality." That made Lance pause. Then he laughed softly. "Fair." The sun began to rise more clearly now. Light spreading across Sherman. Roofs glowing. Windows reflecting gold. The town waking up properly. But somehow it didn't feel like interruption. It felt like continuation. like the night simply turning into another form of calm. Ilana watched it quietly. I used to think survival meant always being ready to leave, she said. Lance nodded slowly. Yeah, she continued. But I think maybe survival also means knowing when you don't have to. That sentence settled between them gently. No one interrupted it. No one corrected it. Octus spoke last. Conclusion, group stability is now classified as sustained. Lance smiled faintly. You're really proud of that word, aren't you? Yes. Ilana laughed softly again. And this time even Lance didn't stop it. They stayed there longer than usual, watching the town fully awake, watching life continue without urgency, and realizing slowly that they were part of it now. Not as visitors, not as fugitives, not as something temporary, but as something that had stayed long enough to matter. Lance stood first. I guess this is it, he said. Ilana looked up at him. It? Normal life. A pause. He shrugged slightly. Whatever that means. Octus stood as well. Normality is a subjective cultural construct. Lance pointed without looking. You are permanently banned from defining life. Octus responded. Understood? Ilana smiled. And then they all started walking back toward town together. Sherman was fully awake now, and yet it still felt calm, still felt steady, still felt like it was holding space for them without asking for anything in return. As they walked, Ilana spoke softly. I think this is what we were missing before. Oh, Lance glanced at her. What? Time without fear. That was all she said. And it was enough. Octus added quietly. Environmental conditions suggest continued improvement in group emotional integration. Lance sighed. You really can't end anything normally. Octus replied, This is normal for me. Ilana laughed softly one last time. And Lance didn't argue anymore, because by now there was nothing left to fix in the way they spoke to each other. Only the way they stayed. Together, through quiet mornings, through silent nights, through ordinary days that had slowly become something extraordinary simply because they were shared. And Sherman, in its gentle, unremarkable way, continued doing what it had always done. It gave them space. It gave them time. And in return, it received 3 people learning at last how to belong.